First of all, greetings to you and to the viewers. The new proposal or the proposal under discussions these days is a repeated version that has been tackled in several previous rounds of negotiations, but this time we seem to be approaching and very near to an end result regarding some of the principles and main pillars of a ceasefire. This one includes a 60-day ceasefire and releasing a certain number of detainees in the first 10 days. Also, 18 dead bodies will be released of the Israeli detainees. In exchange, there will be a humanitarian aid access, intensive humanitarian aid access, according to a specific timeline. Fuel and solar will be admitted into the Gaza Strip to operate the general and public facilities in Gaza. Also, the humanitarian aid related to medical supplies will be entered into the strip with sufficient amounts. Also, there is an agreement of a partial withdrawal of the Israeli troops from some regions, including the Mirage um, corridor and several other regions that have been occupied since March until today, to go back to before the January 18th borders. This agreement should be a step in the way to end the war. We are seeing some stumbling because there is a common a concern to all parties regarding the next day to the war. But if we reach a truce or a ceasefire that is temporary, that we all hope for the Gazans populations, this will be amazing because the bloodshed will stop and the genocide, the ongoing genocide will he cease, and therefore the humanitarian supplies will flow intensively to the strip, which will be the survival of the population from the starvation and the deteriorated health status that most facilities suffer from. Israel accepted the amendments that Hamas said a few hours ago, and they are all very simple related to procedural stuff. They are all. We have an Israeli delegation in Doha today to finalize the negotiations, and we're all hopeful to reach positive outcomes and to for the Netanyahu's visit to be paid next Monday is very integral to conclude the deal and come up with a ceasefire that is long awaited for the Gazan population, and this might pave the way for a sustainable halt of war, which started in the October 7th, 2023, and has lasted till this moment.
Well, now, Egypt and Qatar have long been mediators during this conflict. Now, this time round, how significant is their role when it comes to the mediation process, and how can they pressure both parties into, accepting the proposal?
In fact, the diplomatic efforts exerted by Egypt and Qatar are very vital to the process. Both mediators suffered from the adamant Israeli side, which is the most difficult in this equation, because in more than one round of negotiations, we reached the final phase to actually go through with a deal, and we even approached signing a deal in last January, and we carried out the first phase, but Israel violated everything and went over everything that was agreed upon with the mediators sponsored by the United States. No doubt the Egyptian Qatari influence is somehow limited and does not match the US influence on the Israeli side and on the Netanyahu government, but they have some sort of influence, whether on Hamas or Israel. We know that Egypt and Israel have a peace treaty that Israel depends upon in its national security, neutralizing the biggest and largest Arab nation in the region. And that's why Israel always is keen on keeping good relations with Egypt, and there is ongoing cooperation with Doha as well. That's why I have good relations. That's why both Egypt and Qatar have some sort of positive influence. But anyway, it's limited compared to the US because Netanyahu does not give a lot of attention to the international community or the partners, and sometimes even the United States administration. However, both mediators have some sort of influence due to the that they are neighboring countries, and we have been always concerned with the Palestinian cause as we held all the negotiations and periodic meetings among Palestinian factions. Egypt has always been for Palestinians the compass. Also, Qatar has a lot of influence on Hamas movement as it is the biggest financial supporter to the movement since establishment, and it still embraces some of its leaders. So it has the real influence on the Hamas movement.
Well, sir, as you said there, that the Egyptian and the Qatari side have, exerted great effort when it comes to diplomacy or asserting a possible permanent ceasefire there, but the Israeli side has broken deals many times. Now, what are the main obstacles preventing a final agreement, especially regarding the humanitarian aid access in the Gaza Strip and the Israeli military presence in Gaza?
What obstacles a final agreement is the Israeli government desire and the strong votes within this government to continue the war presented in the far right ministers Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who rejected any humanitarian aid access, and they rejected any halt of aggressions. And there are many voices that support this vision inside Israel. Also, the lack of a true vision on the Israeli side regarding the next day to the war, who's going to run the Gaza Strip, will Israel withdraw or will it occupy the Strip fully? We have seen a lot of statements issued by the Israeli government and military leaders, and disagreements between the military leadership and the government regarding the future of military operations and its casualties and implications on the Israeli economy. The divisions persist. Also, the US administration had only one proposal, the displacement matter, which were really testing the waters, and they were confronted by the Arab world, led by Egypt and Jordan, with complete rejection. And this rejection was supported by the Cairo summit last March with the Egyptian Arab Islamic vision for the future of the Gaza Strip, which is the only vision possible, the only scenario possible, which wasn't completely rejected by the United States but completely rejected by Israel. Leaders of Hamas said that they do not want to govern anymore, but there are Israeli demands regarding to taking Hamas out of Gaza and disarming the movement. These are obstacles to the continuation of a truce. So of course, we're hopeful for it to be concluded, and it will not be very different compared to the truce signed last January. and it lasted only for 40 days, and it collapsed with the first real test regarding the future of Gaza and its fate, according to the Israeli vision, as they want to continue occupying the strip. The vision is still unclear so far.
Well, now, given the reports of Hamas's positive response and the US administration's strong push for a ceasefire, what are the real chances of a lasting resolution beyond the 60-day period? Because we've seen ceasefires in the past that have ended and then back to, fighting again.
The chances this time is much more positive compared to previous times, as the surrounding atmosphere of this deal, whether with the Iranian-Israeli war and how it ended, or the Netanyahu's fate and his government, and the Israeli public sentiment towards the early election, as new Israeli officials are rising in the political scenes as alternative for Netanyahu, and this was stated by the US President Donald Trump as he is trying to provide a safe haven to Netanyahu and giving him impunity to the crimes he's being tried and prosecuted for. Now we are trying to fix the absurd scene Netanyahu created since the October 7th, and no one knows when will it end. Recent Trump statements says that this is the last opportunity for Netanyahu to end the war, as Netanyahu's failure in this war is now a fact for everyone. Everyone is aware of it. The objectives and goals of the war were not implemented because they were not really defined objectives and completely out of the Israeli capabilities. He wasn't even able to release the detainees, which is a mystery. No one really knows how can he not reach the detainees in the very limited area Gaza Strip, and in the meantime he was able to assassinate and target scientists in Iran, which is a huge geography compared to the Gaza Strip. He worked to completely eliminate Hamas,
Yes.
but he could never do that.